What if the woman who destroyed your childhood, got your siblings killed, and left you with nothing, came crawling back, begging for help? 13 years of rage built up inside me. I waited, I planned, and when she was broken, penniless, and desperate, I looked her in the eyes and told her exactly what she deserved to hear. They say every villain has an origin story. Well, mine started with a birthday candle and a lie. I was 2 years old when Mark was born, my little brother. You'd think being the firstborn would give me some sort of head start in the affection department. But to my mom, Mark was the new toy, and I was the junk she couldn't return. At first, yeah, I acted out I was 2. Who doesn't throw a tantrum when the spotlight disappears? But unlike most toddlers, I didn't get a second chance. Mom didn't see a kid struggling, she saw a threat, and instead of helping me adjust, she tossed me aside like I was nothing. That's when my grandparents stepped in, my lifeline. They weren't perfect, but they gave me stability, something resembling love. They taught me that being a big brother wasn't about attention, it was about protection. So, I changed. I stepped up. I helped with Mark. I learned to love him, but it didn't matter. In my mom's eyes, I was still that demonic hellspawn. Her words, not mine. Time marched on. My mom had 4 kids in total. Me and Mark, both from my dad. Then came Sam and Alicia, her kids, with my stepfather. So, now it was me, Mark, Alicia, and Sam. A patchwork family with me barely stitched in at the edge. I was 13 when things really started going south. Rebellious, sure, but who wouldn't be after years of being ignored, tossed aside, and passed between relatives like an unwanted hand? My stepfather wasn't the kind of guy who believed in talking it out. If you didn't toe the line, he'd beat the independence out of you. And Mom, she'd just sit there, watch it happen. Sometimes I'd look into her eyes, trying to find a shred of love or guilt. Nothing, just blank. Like I was some mistake she was trying to erase by looking through me. That was the moment the first spark of revenge lit inside me. I didn't know what to do with it. I was still a kid, messed up from years of abuse and even a bookshelf that nearly crushed me at 11, but I knew one thing: I couldn't forgive her. Not now. Not ever. Things at home were worse than any sitcom villain's dream. My mother and stepfather didn't just slack, they outright refused to do any housework. They'd wait for the weekend, let my grandparents leave for a visit, and then drop the hammer on me and Mark, scrubbing toilets, hauling trash, yard work, climbing trees to trim branches onto. I mean climbing, not supervising. I was 10 years old, hanging off branches with rusty shears, like some kind of twisted jungle gym challenge. One time, they made me climb the roof to clean the gutters. At 11, no harness, no help, just me and the wind. But I did it, because if I didn't, I'd get a beating. That's not chores. That's child labor survival disguised as responsibility. By 14, I had officially become the live-in babysitter. Mom dumped Alicia on me and Mark constantly. Alicia was to now Sam barely out of the womb. And guess what? Stepdad had to play his precious video games. We were allowed to watch ... if we behaved, but touch a controller, forget it. That was a capital offense in his book. And the room went cold. Mark and I bolted into panic mode, tearing through the house, checking closets, rooms, the garage. My dad was visiting. He burned his hand on the stove when we all started freaking out. Everyone was looking, but we didn't check the pool. Then the scream. My mother's scream wasn't panic, it was pure horror. We rushed out, and there she was. Alicia, tiny body, blue lips, not breathing. The ambulance came. My dad shielded me and Mark from seeing too much. But we knew. That night, they pulled the plug. Alicia was gone. Just like that, my sister was dead. And Mom had made mistake number 2. Mark and I blamed ourselves, like any kids would. We were watching her, right? But our grandparents stepped in again, assuring us it wasn't our fault. CPS launched an investigation. My dad filed for custody, and for a brief moment, justice looked possible. He won, temporarily, but my grandparents, still under the spell of family loyalty, fought it. They actually believed Mom deserved to raise us, and somehow, she won us back. That was the second time I was betrayed by someone I trusted. Time warped, emotions blurred, and before I knew it, I was 18, prepping for graduation, trying to piece together a future. Mark was 15, tougher now, angrier too. He'd gotten into a fight and busted his finger, which meant surgeries, pins, and painkillers. Heavy stuff. Stuff that needed monitoring. Guess who was in charge of his meds? Your mama should have known. I should have stopped it, but I was too focused on getting out. I was chasing college applications and job interviews when my grandfather picked me up one day. I just knew. When we pulled up to the house, The ambulance was there. A stretcher, a body bag. Mark was gone. Dead at 15 from an overdose. Because Mom wasn't paying attention. That wasn't a mistake. That was murder through neglect. That was the moment the final piece inside me broke. Whatever part of me still hoped for reconciliation, or love, or anything ... with my brother. After that, the family tree split like lightning hit it. Dad's side took me in. No hesitation. Mom's side, they tried to justify her again. Said she was hurting, that she meant well. Screw that. She had 4 kids now, 2 were dead. One taken by CPS, and I was all that was left, and I hated her. I swore that day she'd never get peace again, not from me. I wouldn't hit her, scream at her, or break her things. Nah, that'd be too easy. I wanted her to feel it fondly over years, the same way she made me feel helpless, unwanted, and disposable. I wanted her to hurt, and I promised myself I'd never stop until she did. By the time I hit 30 and I wasn't a kid anymore, I was a war zone with skin. Living under my mom's roof meant living by her husband's rules. My stepfather was the kind of man who thought respect came from fear. Not earned, not mutual. Just fear I wasn't allowed to question him. Not about chores, not about homework, not even about food. If I opened my mouth and didn't say what he wanted to hear, I got hit. Simple as that. It didn't matter if I was right. It didn't matter if I was calm. If I spoke up at all, his fists did the talking. You'd think maybe my mother would step in, say something, but no. She watched, silent, like a statue carved from ice. Sometimes, I swear I saw a flicker of satisfaction on her face, like she thought I deserved it. That's when I realized something: I was never going to be safe in that house. Not emotionally, not physically. If I was going to survive, I had to learn how to blend in, how to keep my head down. But even then, I couldn't stop the anger from growing. Every time he knocked me down, every time she ignored my pain, that little fire inside me got hotter. Still, I stayed quiet on the outside, but inside, I was building something. Not a plan. Not yet. Just pressure. And when you keep pressure bottled up long enough, one day, it explodes. I remember one night, in particular. I'd gotten home from school, homework in one hand, pain in the other. He saw the way I looked at him, just a glance, and that was enough. He backhanded me so hard I hit the floor. My mom didn't even flinch. She just changed the channel on the TV. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stared at the ceiling in my room and started whispering to myself, "You'll pay, you'll both pay, not today, not tomorrow, but one day," and that whisper became my mantra. The house wasn't just abusive, it was a machine built to grind kids into dust. There was no rest, no play, just chores and punishment. If it wasn't beating us into obedience, it was working us to the bone. Every weekend, like clockwork, they'd drop the entire household on me and Mark. Dishes, laundry, bathrooms, mowing, hedge trimming, and the dangerous stuff too: climbing trees to cut branches, dragging heavy trash bins through mud, fixing roof tiles with duct tape and prayers. And if we refused, more bruises, more silence from my mother. I should have been angry at both of them, and I was. But more than anything, I was angry at her, because she was supposed to protect us. She was supposed to be better than this. Instead, she was worse. She smiled when I limped. She laughed when I failed. She called me names that stuck like poison: failure, burden, mistake. So, I gave up on being the good kid, the obedient son. I started talking back. Not loud, not wild, but with poison. I learned the power of quiet rebellion. I'd look her dead in the eyes and say, "I'm not afraid of you anymore." And that scared her more than screaming ever did. She knew what it meant. I was changing. I wasn't a child anymore. I was watching, learning, and planning. Sometimes, I think she could see the revenge building in my stare. She'd pause when I walked by. She'd flinch when I got too close. That was when I realized I didn't need to fight her physically. I just had to wait. Let her screw up. Let the world catch up to the monster she really was. And it didn't take long. Because when Alicia died, when that little girl drowned on our watch, it wasn't me who failed. It wasn't Mark, it was her. The mother who was asleep while a toddler wandered into the backyard and into the pool. The stepfather too distracted by video games to care. The house of cards started falling, and that's when my rebellion turned real. I stopped hiding my contempt. I spoke with venom. I started documenting everything: what she said, what she did, every slip-up and shady move. I didn't have a clear plan yet, but I knew one thing. I would never, ever let her live peacefully again. Every time I looked at her, I wanted her to feel the same helplessness she forced on me all those years. The kind that clings to your bones and keeps you awake at night. So I waited for the perfect moment. And when it came, when she let Mark overdose, when her carelessness killed him too, I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just watched her cry at the funeral and knew I would make her cry harder one day, because she thought she'd broken me. But really, she'd created me. Not her son, not her victim, but her reckoning. It started with a question, one of those innocent, throwaway questions you ask without thinking, "Where's Alicia?" The second the word has left my mouth, the entire house froze. Mark and I had been in the living room, supposed to be watching her while our stepdad played video games. We weren't allowed to play, just sit there quietly, be good, and maybe get to watch him gloat over digital victories like they meant something. But Alicia was nowhere in sight. Panic hit like a tidal wave. We tore through the house, yelling her name, throwing open closet doors, flipping couch cushions, checking every hiding spot we could think of. Our stepdad checked the master bedroom. Mom was passed out with Sam, probably after another night of pretending to care for her new baby. My dad, who'd been visiting, dropped everything and rushed to help. He burned his hand on the stove in the chaos, but he didn't stop, just kept searching. The garage, the bathrooms, under the beds, nothing. We didn't think to check the backyard. We didn't think to check the pool, until we heard it, that scream. It wasn't just a scream. It was a sound you don't forget, not ever. It split the air in half. My mother shrieking at the top of her lungs. The kind of scream that makes your blood curdle before your brain even catches up. Mark and I bolted outside, and there she was, Alicia, limp, blue, not breathing. My stepdad fumbled through chest compressions. My mom was crying, yelling, trying to do more. Too late, too frantic. My dad dragged Mark and me back inside, shielding our eyes, like that would somehow protect us from what was happening. We knew she was gone. The ambulance came. They worked on her. God, they tried, but that night, they pulled the plug. Alicia died, 2 years old, gone in the blink of an eye, because none of the adults in that house were doing their job. That moment, watching the lights from the ambulance disappear into the night, changed something inside me forever. The weight of it crushed us. Mark and I were just kids, and even though we were supposed to be watching her, deep down, we knew this wasn't on us. But try telling that to a teenager haunted by guilt. 4 weeks after, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, floating, lifeless. The guilt clawed at my insides like a rabid animal. Mark was the same. We didn't talk about it much, but we didn't have to. You could see it in his eyes. The hollow stare, the silence. We blamed ourselves. Even when our grandparents tried to reassure us, "It's not your fault. You were just kids." It didn't matter. The damage was already done. And then Child Protective Services got involved. It was almost a relief when they showed up. Like maybe, finally, someone would hold our mother accountable. My dad saw the opening and pounced. He filed for custody, argued that she was unfit, unsafe, unstable, and for a moment, a brief moment, it looked like justice was winning out of that nightmare house. But of course it didn't last. Our grandparents, who had always meant well but never seemed to understand the depth of my mom's toxicity, fought back. They believed she was just struggling, that she needed support, that she could still be a good mother. They couldn't see what we saw. The monster behind the tears, the manipulator behind the sob story. And somehow she got us back into the very place Alicia had died. Back under the roof of the woman who'd let her daughter drown while she napped. Back with the stepfather who saw parenting as a series of chores, best outsourced to the nearest kid. It was like watching a horror movie rewind itself. But this time, something was different. Mia wasn't the same boy I'd been before the scream, before the pool. That boy was dead, drowned right alongside Alicia. What was left was sharper, harder, focused, because I saw it now. The game she played, the way she weaponized guilt, the way she cried when it suited her, twisted people into feeling sorry for her, convinced them she was just a grieving mother instead of the negligent one who'd caused all the pain. And I hated her for it. The grief I had for Alicia, it didn't fade, but it changed, hardened, mutated into something dangerous. It wasn't just sadness, it was fuel. Every time I thought about her little body on that deck, every time I remembered her laugh, her smile, her tiny hand gripping mine, I felt the fire burn hotter, and I promised myself again, she would never get peace. Not after what she took from us. Not after what she did. This was no longer just about my pain, this was about Alicia, this was about justice, and this time, I was going to make sure she felt it. One slow, excruciating piece at a time. Grief doesn't come in waves. That's a lie people tell you, so it sounds poetic. Grief is more like gravity. Once it hits, it pulls everything down with it. After Alicia died, Mark changed. He was always quieter than me, more sensitive, but now there was a weight behind his eyes, like he was carrying something none of us could see. He didn't talk much, didn't smile, and when he did, it never reached his eyes. We were still just kids, but we were kids who knew what death looked like. We'd held it in our hands. We'd seen what happened when the people meant to protect you looked away for just 1 second too long. So when Mark got hurt, busted his finger in a fight, of all things, it didn't feel like a big deal at first. A dumb schoolyard scuffle, a few pins and screws, and some pain meds. He'd be fine. That's what we told ourselves. That's what we wanted to believe. But nothing is ever that simple when my mother's involved. See, the doctors gave Mark strong medication, the kind that comes with labels longer than your arm, the kind that needs to be monitored closely. You don't just leave it out. You don't treat it like cough syrup. But that's exactly what she did. Mom was supposed to watch his dosage, make sure he took just enough to handle the pain, not too much, not too often. But of course she didn't. She was distracted, or careless, or high herself. Probably all three. I still remember the look on my grandfather's face when he picked me up from school that day. He wasn't crying. He wasn't angry. He just looked empty, like someone had scooped out his soul and left the shell behind. I asked him what was wrong. He didn't answer. We pulled into the driveway, and I saw them, the flashing lights, the stretcher, the body bag. Time stopped. I didn't need to ask. I didn't need to hear it. I knew. Mark was gone, 15 years old, dead from an overdose. I don't remember walking into the house. I don't remember sitting down. All I remember is staring at the floor, trying to understand how this happened again, how she let this happen. Again, Alicia drowned because she wasn't watching. Mark overdosed because she wasn't paying attention. 2 lives, 2 children, gone because of her. And this time, there was no ambulance to chase, no last-minute CPR, just a bag, a silence, a hole that nothing could ever fill. The funeral was a blur. The speeches, the crying, the people I barely knew, pretending to care it, or felt like a movie I couldn't turn off. I didn't cry. I couldn't. My grief wasn't soft. It was jagged. It cut every time I breathed. When they lowered Mark into the ground, I didn't say goodbye. I made a promise. She would never touch another child again. She would never manipulate another soul. She would never sleep peacefully knowing what she'd done. I didn't know how yet, but I'd make sure her pain never ended. The family split like shattered glass after that. My father, who had always tried to do the right thing, drew a line in the sand. He took me in without question. No debates, no custody fights. Just packed my things and told me, "You're safe now." My mom sighed, though they weren't so clear-cut. My grandparents, bless them, still clung to the idea that she could be helped. That maybe grief had changed her, that losing 2 children might finally open her eyes. But I knew better. Grief hadn't changed her. It had made her worse. Made her more manipulative, more desperate, more dangerous. And she still had 1 child left, Sam. But not for long. CPS stepped in, just like they had after Alicia's death. This time, they didn't hesitate. Sam was removed from the home, placed in foster care. I never saw him again, never even got to say goodbye. That was it. My siblings were gone. Alicia dead, an only child forged in fire and failure. I still have dreams about Mark. Sometimes he's laughing, sometimes we're just sitting on the couch playing video games, and then I wake up and remember he's not there. He'll never be there again. Because of her. People say revenge won't bring the dead back, and they're right. But it can make sure the person who took them never rests again. I stopped thinking of her as my mother after Mark died. She became her, that woman, that thing. I used to look at her and see history. Now I saw a future I had to prevent. Because if she could do this to Matuus, what would she do to the next person? To another child? To another family? So I sharpened my anger into something useful. I let go of trying to be good or forgiving. I didn't want peace. I didn't want understanding. I wanted justice. And if no one else was going to give it to her, I would, piece by piece, pain for pain, loss for loss, until she felt every ounce of the suffering she'd put into the world. And then I'd leave her there, alone, just like she left us. When a family breaks, it doesn't shatter cleanly. It tears ragged, uneven, and leaves wounds that don't heal, right? After Mark's death, that tear ripped us straight down the middle. On one side, my father and his family. On the other, my mother and the 2 people still clinging to the belief that she was salvageable. My grandparent. I didn't blame them. Not completely. They were all loyal to a fault. The kind of people who believed that blood should always come first, even when that blood poisons everything it touches. My grandmother was especially stubborn. She couldn't let go of the daughter she once had, the version of my mom that existed before the anger, before the neglect, before the chaos. But that version was gone. dead and buried long before Alicia and Mark ever were. My grandfather, he was different. Quieter. Worn down. I could tell the fight in him had been drained by the years of holding everything together. Still, he listened. When I told him the truth about how I felt about what she'd done, he didn't argue. He didn't defend her, he just nodded. Sometimes, that was enough. Meanwhile, my dad's side didn't hesitate. They took me in like I'd always belonged. There were no questions, no guilt trips, no conditions, just safety, peace, the kind of warmth I hadn't felt since I was a little kid being tucked in by my grandparents before all the darkness took over. But peace is a strange thing when you've lived in chaos your whole life. At first I didn't know what to do with it. I'd flinch when someone raised their voice on if it wasn't at me. I'd panic when I forgot to do a chore, expecting to be screamed at or hit. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to reveal that this was just another trap. It never came. And slowly, I started to trust again. But that trust didn't extend to my mother. She tried to call, tried to send messages through family, letters, gifts, apologies wrapped in manipulation. I miss you. I'm sorry you feel that way. You don't understand how much I've been hurting. That was her favorite trick, playing the victim, twisting every situation until she was the one who had been wronged. Never mind the bruises, never mind the graves. She wanted sympathy. She got silence. I ignored every message, every attempt, every fake smile at family events. I made it very clear if she was in the room, I was out of it. It hurt my grandparents, I know, but I couldn't live for their comfort anymore. I had survived too much to pretend things could ever go back to the way they were. At that point, I wasn't interested in forgiveness. I was interested in making her feel every inch of the pain she'd buried the rest of us under, and I was just getting started. Revenge doesn't always start with fire. Sometimes, it starts with silence, with showing up to the battlefield unarmed, and still walking away the victor. After the funeral, after the tears had dried and the well-meaning condolences turned to empty echoes, my mother began to unravel. But it wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was slow, insidious like rot under the floorboards. That's when I saw my opportunity. My grandfather, bless his heart, had always been a patient man. Too patient. The kind of person who would rather suffer in silence than confront anyone, even when they deserved it. And my mother, she knew that. She used it. After Mark's death, she leaned hard on him emotionally, financially, physically. My grandmother, already weary from years of fighting for a daughter who didn't care, just gave up. She defaulted to my grandfather's judgment, which meant my mother had two elderly enablers and no accountability. But I was still there, and I was done playing the obedient son. I made it my mission to sabotage every little manipulation she tried to pull. When she asked for money, I asked why she needed it in front of them. When she tried to twist facts, I corrected her with receipts. When she played the victim, I told the real story. Always calm, always direct, never cruel at least not on the surface. And every time I did it, I saw something beautiful. Cracks not in her face, in her composure, in her illusion. She would cry, sometimes break down right there in the living room, accuse me of being ungrateful, of turning everyone against her. But the more she cried, the more I smiled. Because she wasn't sad, she was exposed, and it scared her. For the first time I held the power, but that wasn't enough. Then, like fate was listening in, she slipped at work, herniated some discs, screwed up her back so badly that walking became agony. And when I got the call, I didn't feel pity. I felt pure satisfaction. This woman who had let my brother die, who had hit me, ignored me, abandoned me, was now crawling back into the house in pain. Broken, literally. I helped carry her bags in that day, because I wanted to see her wince. Her meds were strong, real narcotic-level stuff. Painkillers that dulled more than just physical aches. And for a while she floated through the house like a zombie, drifting between sobbing fits and drugged-out stares. That's when I turned the screws. I started hiding her pills. Just a few. At first, 1 or 2 from each bottle, placed in places she'd never look behind light switches. Under the fridge, inside boxers marked Christmas. Sometimes I tossed them. Sometimes I just held on to them and watched her spiral. She thought she was losing her mind. She accused my grandfather, then my grandmother. I denied everything, and she could never prove it. Watching her suffer, limping, cursing, dragging herself around the house, I should have felt bad, but I didn't. This was pain, raw and honest, the kind she had never acknowledged when it was mine. And karma wasn't done yet. A few months later, she got into a car accident. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to bring police into the picture. And when they found the cocktail of pills in her system, DUI, 6 months in jail. When I heard the news, I laughed. Out loud, it wasn't just that she got caught, it was that she finally had to face consequences. Real ones. Not family arguments, not awkward holidays, steel bars, a record team, and I savored it. While she was locked up, I made my next move. I took everything she owned and shoved it into storage. Her room, mine. Now her bed, replaced. Her space, gone. And when she got out, I didn't give her a warm welcome. I gave her the couch, the one with the metal bars that dug into her spine, the one that made her wince every morning as she stood up, stiff and aching. I watched her hobble around like a ghost of her former self, and I didn't lift a finger. She'd ask for help. I'd shrugged. She'd ask for a pillow. I'd say, should have thought about that before. Every request became a chance for payback, and I took them all. She never raised her hand to me again, never shouted, never dared, because she knew this wasn't her house anymore. This was mine, and she was just squatting in it. You'd think that after a DUI, jail time, and months of sleeping on a busted old couch, my mother would have hit rock bottom. She didn't, because people like her, they always find a new low to sink into. Pain became her new personality. Every step was a theatrical wince, every breath a dramatic sigh. She wanted sympathy, but all I saw was weakness and opportunity. She was broken, and I was going to make sure she stayed that way. At first I kept playing the slow game. The pill hiding continued. She'd search high and low, ranting that someone's stealing from me. I never admitted a thing. Just gave her that look, the one that made her unsure if she was paranoid, or if I really was doing it. That doubt, that uncertainty, it aided her. But things got worse and more dangerous when she started getting desperate. She couldn't work because of her back, couldn't drive because of the DUI, couldn't manage money because she'd already blown through every cent of her inheritance. So she turned to the only thing she had left: manipulation. She started convincing my grandparents to buy her drugs, not the over-the-counter kind, the illegal kind. She'd make the connections, they'd hand over the cash. She made it sound like medicine, like something innocent, just a little relief for her pain. But I knew better. She wasn't treating pain, she was chasing oblivion. And the worst part, my grandmother played right into it. She's suffering, she'd say. She's still your mother. No, she wasn't. She was a parasite, and I'd had enough. I confronted them, my grandparents, face to face, told them it was illegal, told them they were risking everything, fines, jail time, total ruin. My grandfather listened, really listened. You could see the guilt settling into his bones. But my grandmother, she folded guilt-tripped him into silence. She's our little girl, she whispered. That was her fatal flaw. She couldn't stop seeing the daughter she wanted to have, even as the real one bled her dry. So I took action. If they wouldn't stop her, I would. Anonymously, of course. I placed a tip with the local authorities, told them someone in the house was dealing, that there were prescription drugs being traded illegally. I didn't name names, just enough to make them look. For a few days, I waited in anticipation, kept an eye on the front window. My heart would spike every time a car slowed down in front of the house, but nothing happened. No bust, no arrest, no questioning. The law didn't bite. That failure should have crushed me, but it didn't, because revenge isn't just about wins, it's about pressure, and I was still applying it. Even though she never found out about the tip, things changed. My mother got more paranoid. She stopped leaving the house, stopped letting people over. She double-counted her pills, accused strangers of watching her. She was unraveling fast, and I fed it. More mind games, more pills hidden, more whispered doubts in her ear. Sometimes, when she'd complain about her back, I'd say, "Funny, you didn't seem to notice our pain growing up." She'd flinch, go quiet, retreat. That was the real prison now, not the jail cell she'd once sat in, but the mental one I'd built brick by brick. And she was trapped in it, alone, addicted, helpless. But I still wasn't done, because revenge isn't complete until the person who hurt you has nothing left to take. And she still had one thing left. When she got out of jail, she came back to the house like nothing had changed, but everything had. Her room, gone. I'd claimed it while she was behind bars, turned it into my sanctuary. My old cramped bedroom had become a sleek little gaming cave, and her stuff tossed into storage like yesterday's garbage. She didn't ask for her room back. Not directly. Maybe she knew what the answer would be. Or maybe the shame still clung to her like the stench of jail soap and regret. Either way, she didn't fight it. So she took the couch, and I made sure it stayed that way. It was the worst couch in the house, the kind with broken springs and a metal bar that dug into your spine like a knife. Every morning I'd watch her shuffle around, hunched over, groaning in pain. She tried to stretch, winced, tried to sit upright, winced again. I didn't offer help. Didn't offer a pillow, nothing. She asked once. I shrugged. You made your bed, now lie in it. Or in this case, the couch. She didn't ask again. I didn't need to scream or shout. My presence alone was punishment. The sound of me laughing in the next room, the click of my controller, the smell of hot food I cooked for myself but never offered her, and every night she curled up on that couch like the broken thing she'd become. A woman who'd once controlled everything, now reduced to sleeping under a ceiling that hated her. The power shift was complete. She had no job, no money, no authority. She didn't even have her health, and she damn sure didn't have a son's love. All she had was the couch, and pain, and me. It was slow, methodical, and delicious. The kind of revenge that doesn't explode, it seeps. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about the grand finale. Sometimes, it's just about making sure someone wakes up every single day knowing they've already lost. By now, her pain had become the only thing she talked about. Every conversation was a monologue about her back, her nerves, how no one understood how hard life was, and every complaint was just another fishing line cast into the sea of my grandparents' guilt. Most days, my grandmother bit hard. She'd slip her cash, small bills, at first, then 20s, then 50s. I watched it all and I realized this wasn't just pity, this was funding. I started asking questions. Where was the money going? Why were strange cars pulling into the driveway at odd hours? Why was she whispering on the phone like she was planning a heist? Then it clicked, she was buying off the books painkillers, not prescriptions, not refills, street meds, and not with her own money, with theirs. My grandparents, sweet, exhausted, hearts-to-big grandparents, had become unwitting drug mules. They didn't know the details, but they didn't want her to suffer. She'd ask, they'd pay. The cycle repeated. I confronted them, told them flat out that this wasn't just illegal, it was dangerous. What if she owed again? What if she got caught? What if they got caught? My grandfather nodded, silent and ashamed. My grandmother, she cried, said she just wanted to help, that she couldn't turn her back on her own daughter. But me, I could, and I did. I gave the police an anonymous tip, told them someone at our address was dealing, or at least buying. I knew they wouldn't kick down the door without proof, but I hoped it would shake things up. It didn't. Nothing happened. Days passed, then weeks. No knock, no patrol cars, no questions. The system had failed again. But the damage was still done, just not in the way I expected. She got jumpy, paranoid, started checking behind blinds. Whispered more, locked doors that never used to lock. She knew someone was onto her, she just didn't know it was me. I watched her spiral from behind my quiet smirk, knowing she felt the noose tightening, even if it never fully closed. And through it all, I kept playing my little game, misplacing meds, planting subtle doubts, feeding her anxiety like fuel to a fire. She thought someone was sabotaging her. She was right, but it was a war she couldn't win, because I was fighting it with her own tactics, and I had way more practice surviving pain than she ever did manipulating it. You'd think that after everything, after jail, addiction, the broken back, and the years of slow humiliation, she'd have learned her lesson. But no, because parasites don't stop feeding just because the host is dying. They crawl, beg, and cling until the bitter end. And my mother was no different. My mother, by the time I hit 31, life had finally begun to move forward. I had a job I loved, a partner who gave me hope, and a plan, one that didn't include the ghost of a woman who used to call herself my mother, but she had other ideas. My grandfather, my rock, my teacher, the only consistent male figure in my life, had passed, quietly, peacefully, and with him went the last barrier between her and complete collapse. My grandmother was spiraling without him. Her health declined, her spark dimmed, and within months, we'd started prepping to move her into a retirement home. She was finally going somewhere safe, stable, somewhere my mother couldn't get her claws into her anymore. That's when it happened. One afternoon I went to visit, sat with my grandmother, helped sort her paperwork, checked on her meds, normal stuff. That's when she walked in, my mother. She didn't say hello, didn't ask how I was. She sat down across from me, looked me dead in the eye, and asked the question I'd always feared, but, will you take care of me after Grandma's gone? I blinked, thought I misheard. It's your duty. I'm your mother. Duty. This woman who beat me, neglected me, destroyed my siblings, shattered our family, thought she could waltz back into my life like this was a sitcom finale and we'd de-wrap everything up in a heartwarming monologue. And for a second, I said nothing. I stood up, walked over, looked her dead in the eyes, and let it all go. You get nothing from me, I said, ice cold. Grandma's going into a retirement home. I'm moving out of state. You destroyed my life. You let Mark die. You let Alicia drown. You let Sam disappear. You broke every law of love, every rule of parenting, and now you want help. Her mouth opened. She tried to speak. I didn't let her. You'll die alone, and I will laugh when you do. You'll never meet my children if I ever have any. You won't be at my wedding. You won't even get a phone call when I leave. You are not my mother. You're a cancer, and I'm cutting you out. Her tears came fast, messy, real. She wasn't crying for me, or for what she did. She was crying because she knew it was over. She'd played every card and lost them all. I turned to my grandmother, who'd been listening in stunned silence, and said, "I'll still take care of you. You're not perfect, but you tried." She didn't, and she never will. That moment, that final blow, it wasn't loud, it wasn't violent, but it was lethal, because in that instant, I became everything she could never control. Her last chance, her final lifeline, gone. And I made sure she knew exactly why I didn't scream. I didn't rage, I told the truth, and I made her live with it. Every second, every day. I still think about her sometimes. Wonder if she's still on that couch, still limping around the house, still waiting for someone else to save her, but not me. I already did my part. I survived, and I made damn sure she'd never forget it. People think revenge is about fire, one big explosion, a moment of impact. But real revenge, it's colder, slower. It's the echo that never leaves a room. It's the silence after you've spoken the truth that finally ends it all. When I walked out of that house for the last time, I didn't just leave her behind. I buried her, not literally, but emotionally, spiritually. She died that day in my eyes. The last of her illusions shattered. No more games, no more guilt trips. Just a woman broken by her own choices and me. I was free, but freedom's a funny thing when you've lived your entire life chained to trauma. You don't really know what to do with it at first. It feels like stepping out of a dark room into the sun. Everything hurts before it starts to heal. The first few months were weird. I didn't have to listen for footsteps in the hallway or wonder when the next blow-up was coming. I didn't have to hide my things or keep my guard up. I just existed. And that was terrifying, because when you grow up in survival mode, peace feels like a trick, like calm before the storm. But the storm never came. Instead, I built a life. I got the job, found love, started laying down roots in a new place, far away from the ghosts of my childhood. I began to smile more, to breathe deeper, to sleep through the night without waking up in cold sweats. Some days I still cry, for Alicia, for Mark, even for Sam, wherever he is now. Not because I'm weak, because I remember, because I still love them. Being an older brother wasn't a role, it was my identity. And when they were taken from me, it ripped something vital out of my soul. No amount of revenge can ever put that back. But what it can do is make sure the person responsible never gets the chance to hurt anyone else again. That was always the mission. It wasn't just about rage, it was about legacy. Alicia deserved to grow up. Mark deserved to laugh again. Sam deserved a family. And I deserved to live without fear. So now I live for them. Every good thing I do, every kind act, every achievement, I do it in their name. And my mother, she lives in silence, in absence. No birthday cards, no family gatherings, no invitations, just the emptiness she carved out for herself. She wanted to be at the center of everything. Now she's at the center of nothing. Some people say I should forgive, that it's healthier, that holding on to hatred will rot me from the inside. But here's the truth. I don't hate her anymore. I pitied her, because she had 4 children, and she lost every single one. And not to accidents or fate, but to her own failure. That's not a wound. That's a sentence. One she has to serve every single day until the end of her life. So when people ask if I've healed, I say this. Healing isn't forgetting. It's remembering without being consumed. And I remember everything. I just don't let it own me anymore. Revenge didn't bring my siblings back, but it gave me peace. It gave her the sentence she earned. And now, I finally get to live. If this story struck a chord, share it. And if you've ever risen from ashes like mine, hit that subscribe button. Your voice matters. So does your survival.